One very important concept found in the Buddhist worldview is the idea that our mind is the creator of our happiness and suffering. Our mind, especially our thoughts, are what shape our feelings and our experiences. And I find it necessary to come back to this again and again because things routinely appear very different to my mind to the way that they actually exist. Do you find that happening to you? I think in large part this is due to self-grasping ignorance, but also because of the karmic seeds that we carry and also because of the way our minds have been habituated. Not everything I think is true. Such a shocking realization. If I don't monitor my thoughts, then chances are good my creative writing is going to take off and spinning with elaborate fantasies about what just happened that have nothing to do with reality or what could potentially happen in the future. So I'm catching this more and more, and I find that very liberating. When we don't monitor what's going on in our minds and we don't monitor what we say and do, then we end up creating a lot of messes in our life. Venerable Chodron said that. And it's true, isn't it? It becomes clear that only one person can ever make me feel happy, sad, angry, anxious, uncomfortable, and that's me, my own thoughts, and how I interpret the way something has happened. It's not so much about what happens as how we think about what happens. So that's why the mental factors of mindfulness and introspective awareness are so important, um, so that we can keep our minds more in virtue as we want to and catch the non-virtuous thoughts and tendencies more quickly and put them down faster. So yeah, along these lines, the Lamrim mentions 6 factors that give rise to afflictions, and I find it really helpful to come back to these as a way of raising my awareness about what's happening in my mind, and especially the one about distorted attention. So I'll just mention the other 5 and then elaborate on distorted attention. So the first one is contact with an object, and all it takes is seeing an object to give rise to feelings. You know, we make contact with something, it gives rise to feelings, and right away the tendency is to be attached or attracted to things that give rise to pleasurable feelings and aversion to those that are not so pleasurable. And so we can say that every affliction that arises in our mind, attachment, aversion, and all the other secondary afflictions that arise, you know, that can be subsumed under those two, all of them are preceded by distorted attention. So understanding a little bit about how distorted attention puts our awareness on the negative aspects of something and exaggerates them, or puts our mind on the positive aspects and exaggerates them above and beyond what's there, then we can begin to look for that. We can begin to notice when our mind is starting to really focus in, hone in on either the positive or the negative aspects of something. And then we have a chance to interrupt right there. We can say, okay, look what my mind's doing. I need to avert my mind to something that's more wholesome. So that's one thing. The second one is detrimental influences, such as wrong friends. And so we have to keep checking how much does peer pressure or family pressure or our tendency to want to please others, how much does that influence our behavior and take us away from the way that we know ethically we want to behave, takes us away from our values. Surely we've all been negatively influenced by friends who were confused about their own values and spiritual goals. I was thinking about this, reading about how many of the people who were involved in the January 6th storming of the Capitol, probably some of them were just influenced by friends. Hey, let's go to the Capitol today and see what happens. Let's see if we can get into some trouble. Probably none of them expected to be getting a sentence of one kind or another, or a fine, whatever they've ended up with. The third one is verbal stimuli, which includes social media, news, books, magazines, those sorts of things. And so I find it good to come back again and again to see how much am I being influenced by those things. And since the election, I've really tapered off on how much news I allow myself to watch. One example of this that's unfortunate to read about in the news is that on TikTok right now, people are posting videos of kids that are, or vandalize school property, and then encouraging kids to do something similar. And unfortunately, kids are doing it. So this is a way that social media and peer pressure and those sorts of things are influencing non-virtuous actions. So again, we have to really check up how we're using things like TikTok or Twitter or Facebook, those sorts of things. The three internal factors are the ones that I think are a little more interesting in my own practice, especially distorted attention. So when I can begin to recognize negative thoughts and inaccurate perceptions for what they are, then of course my mind can be more realistic and drop the disturbing emotions, the afflictions more quickly. And I find that this helps me to feel better emotionally. It helps my relationships with the people I live with. And more importantly, it helps me to fulfill my spiritual goals. But to get rid of distorted attitudes, then the first step is to clearly see the mistaken beliefs on which they're based. So often distorted attention uh, involve how we have thought about a person or a conversation or a disturbing experience. So again, distorted attention, we're putting too much attention on the negative aspect, the positive aspect. And we're so sure that our thoughts are accurate when that distorted attention is going on. So we have to really check up and see, what am I thinking? First of all, what am I thinking? Even being aware of that is a big step, isn't it? And then, is what I'm thinking true? So often these distorted attentions, as I mentioned, lead to anger, attachment, and all the secondary afflictions. And, just as an example, when we're angry with someone, that person appears to be wretched, 100%, right? And then later on, when the anger has subsided, all of a sudden we go back to seeing that person as a friend or as appealing. So that should be a clue right there, a red flag, like, well, what's happening here that this person's changing so drastically in a short amount of time? That doesn't come from the outside, it comes from our own mind. There are many types of distorted attention that I've started identifying, and many of them Venerable talks about regularly, but another one is overgeneralizing with thoughts like, oh, this person is always criticizing me, or this person never listens to me, or I always have to do the vacuuming, or whatever the case may be. Anytime I find the words always and never coming up, that's a good clue that there's some kind of permanence that I'm assigning to the person or the situation. So overgeneralizing, there are probably many ways that we overgeneralize from one small incident. So catching that can be helpful. Another common distortion is mind reading, assuming that we know what another person's motivation may be without ever stopping to ask them or confirm with them, is this what you were thinking? Is this what's going on in your mind? So it often appears as if a person has a malicious intention, but often I find when I check with them, no, they didn't. They didn't have a malicious intention. So as Shantideva's been describing, this person may be, and if they did, this person is being pushed by their afflictions. It's not like they had a really conscious intention to create trouble for somebody. So mind reading, catching when I'm just asking myself, well, how do I know what their motivation is? Do I really know? So that can be very helpful. And then based on distorted attention, generalizing, and mind reading, in a split second, I can totally blow a situation out of proportion, making mountains out of molehills. And I've been quite surprised to find this happening, or being more aware of it, I guess, that in the flash, in that amount of time, I've created a whole scenario. You come into a room, you see a certain situation, bam, there's a whole scenario that could have absolutely nothing to do with what's going on. So again, being aware of, how that the mind has the tendency to blow things up. Another distortion is assigning blame. That's another kind of distorted thinking. Blaming ourselves. I'm the worst person in the world. Only I can make everything fall apart. Or blaming others, without trying to connect with them and actually problem solve. Blaming doesn't really help the situation. So that blaming, I think, is another distortion. And to catch that more quickly helps me to be more in touch with questioning what's actually going on here. Assigning blame doesn't help anything. So we could say that many of these erroneous patterns arise because of the last two of these 6 factors, that we have predispositions for certain afflictions. So it's so helpful to get acquainted with what are the predispositions in my mind, what are my tendencies that I'm likely to do, so that I can catch them quicker, put them down faster. Our predispositions for afflictions is like our karmic seeds. So we all carry karmic seeds from past actions we've done, and those ripen due to certain conditions, and they're going to push us into doing certain things. Also, we have emotional habit patterns. So becoming more acquainted with the emotional habit patterns that we have, we're more likely to catch them quicker, put them down faster, keep our minds in virtue. So these are a few ways that we routinely distort the way we think about people and situations, and these color how these people or situations appear to our mind, how we feel about them, and how we experience them. So one thing that I've been working with is when a situation happens that has led to a lot of affliction, is to just try to pinpoint one thought or action that I did and one thought or action that the other person did, and then start comparing them to these distortions and other factors that lead to afflictions, and just to see where I'm out of touch with reality. And that's been so helpful for me to then withdraw a lot of that extra creative writing from the situation and begin to work where I can make a difference. And this is the only place I can make a difference, really. So hope that's helpful.